They always liked to say I was the one who got away, not in the romantic sense, more like the stray sheep, the odd one out, the girl who traded cornfields and county fairs for concrete and code. We hadn't all been under the same roof in over a decade, but now here we were, 3 generations squeezed around a long wooden table on our family's old farmland in Charleston. Laughter filled the air, mingling with the scent of slow-cooked ribs and overcooked judgments. Someone leaned across the table and raised a glass. "To Elena," my uncle drawled, smirking. "Still living in Seattle, right? Big tech life, huh?" Someone else chuckled. "Yeah, but no ring, no kids. Just that studio apartment and Uber Eats." I smiled, because I knew something they didn't. And then, just as dessert was being passed, my cousin's fiancé, new to the fold and blissfully unaware, looked at me and said, "Hey, random question, have you heard of Lunaris Holdings? They just bought a ton of land out here, including this place, I think." Every fork froze. Every mouth paused mid-bite. I looked at him and said calmly, "Yeah, that's mine. If they ever told you you'd never become someone, stay for this." I arrived 10 minutes late on purpose, not to make a statement, just enough to avoid the polite hugs and the obligatory catch-up chatter. I parked 2 blocks away, walked the last stretch in silence, and stepped onto the porch with my hands tucked deep into the pockets of my coat. The wind carried that old low-country salt, and for a second I felt 12 again, small, out of place, hoping someone might look twice and see more than what they assumed. No one did. Inside, the room was full of voices. My aunt's signature laugh rang over the clink of glassware. Kids ran around barefoot with half-eaten cookies, and the successful cousins held court near the fireplace, telling stories that somehow always circled back to themselves. I stood there for a moment, unannounced, unimportant, before my mother finally spotted me. "Elena," she said, as if surprised I'd shown up, "we weren't sure you'd come." That was code for, "we hoped you wouldn't." I gave her a soft smile. "Well, here I am." Her eyes scanned my outfit. Black pants, no label, hair pulled back, makeup barely there. "You look comfortable." "Thanks," I said. The dining table was already full. Everyone had a place, a conversation, a role. Mine, apparently, was still available. I took a seat on the end near the window. The only one who looked at me like I was more than a ghost was my niece, Ava. 12, maybe 13, with big glasses and bigger questions in her eyes. She gave me a quiet wave. I nodded back. That was the warmest welcome I got all night. Dinner began. Toasts were raised. My brother got a standing ovation for finally launching his podcast. My cousin's boyfriend was congratulated for his promotion at a local bank. Every achievement, no matter how small, was celebrated, except mine, which no one asked about. That was always the thing. I didn't fit their idea of success. No husband, no kids, no Facebook check-ins at baby showers or beach resorts. No "look what I did" speeches. I didn't play the part, so they wrote me out of the script. Quietly, collectively. But I was there anyway. Not for them. For me. I used to believe families were like constellations, fixed, glowing, connected, even when far apart. But over time I realized some stars shine brighter because they burn others out. My brother Nate was the sun in our household. Quarterback, homecoming king, scholarship winner. His trophies lined our hallway. His name filled every conversation. "Did you hear Nate got into Clemson? Nate's company's launching next quarter. Nate just bought a new truck." I used to wonder what it would take for someone to say my name in the same breath, without a sigh or a shrug. At 19, I left for Boston with a duffel bag and a busted laptop. I got a job as a grocery cashier during the day and studied computer science at night. Rent was split with 2 strangers and a colony of mice. Heat was optional. Some nights I cried myself to sleep listening to Nate's podcast on the living room speaker, because even in that cramped apartment, his voice still found me. When my appendix ruptured at 24, I nearly died, alone. I was in the hospital for 6 days. No one called, no flowers, not even a "how are you" text from Mum. The only person who showed up was my roommate Jason, a semi-employed saxophonist I'd known for 6 weeks. He brought me applesauce and helped me to the bathroom. That was the moment something inside me snapped clean. I stopped chasing, I stopped explaining. Instead, I built. I created a small software tool to help independent farmers track delivery schedules and grain yields. It started as a side project. By year 2, it became a whisper in the ag tech world. By year 4, I restructured the company under a blind trust and renamed it Lunaris Holdings, after the moon. Quiet, distant, but pulling tides all the same. Nobody knew I was behind it. I liked it that way. Then last year, the AI platform flagged a red zone, a farmland cluster in Charleston, massive overdue loans, no capital flow, no succession plan. The system ran its course, recommended acquisition for redevelopment. It didn't recognize the names, but I did. Bryant Family Farm, ours. I paused for days, hovered over the override button, but I didn't press it, not out of cruelty, out of clarity. They'd made me invisible. Now so had I. By the time the second round of sweet tea hit the table, the performance was in full swing. Nate was mid-story about the time he almost landed a deal with a California distributor, almost being the keyword, though no one seemed to care. My uncle clapped him on the back like he'd just won the Nobel. My mother beamed, her pride practically leaking from her pores. "A real entrepreneur," she said, loud enough for the room, "takes after his father." No one mentioned that Nate's venture had been running at a loss for 18 months. I knew because his company tried to license one of my platforms last year and couldn't afford it. But facts never stood a chance against a good family fiction. I chewed my roast chicken slowly, nodded when appropriate, smiled when I felt like it. I didn't come here to stir the pot, I came to witness the recipe. "So," my aunt drawled, eyes flitting to me like a mosquito landing, "Elena, you still doing that freelancing thing?" I swallowed. "I run a tech firm." "Oh, wow," she blinked. "From home?" "It's fully remote," I replied. My mother chimed in, knife slicing through cornbread. "You should think about something more grounded, like what your brother's doing. People need to see your face, shake your hand." "I meet people all the time," I said quietly. "Just not around here." She didn't answer, didn't need to. The message was clear. Nate leaned back, grinning. "Actually, Mom, speaking of grounded, guess what? I'm this close to getting that land loan approved again. Gonna rebuild the East Barn. Make it a wedding venue, maybe even a distillery. Tourists eat that stuff up." "Really?" someone asked. "Bank's reviewing the final paperwork," he said, like it was already done. "Feels like it's finally turning around for us." I looked at him and said nothing, because I knew he'd never see that money. The loan had been frozen 3 weeks ago. The property wasn't under his name anymore. It was under mine. But I stayed silent, let them toast. I reached for my water glass. That's when Evan, my cousin's fiancé, spoke. He was new, young, enthusiastic in a way that hadn't been dulled by years of backhanded compliments. He tapped the edge of his plate and said casually, "Hey, Elena, random question. Have you heard of a company called Lunaris Holdings?" My fingers froze just before the glass touched my lips. He went on. "We were doing wedding research a few weeks ago and met this broker. He said Lunaris just bought up a big section of farmland out here. Some tech outfit. Sounds impressive. The name stuck with me. Thought maybe you'd know them." Silence. Utter, complete silence. Someone set down a fork a little too hard. My mother's eyes narrowed, scanning me like a searchlight. My brother stopped chewing. Even the jazz in the background suddenly felt too loud. I lowered my glass gently, looked at Evan, looked around the table, and then, very softly, I said, "Yeah, that's mine." My words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They just sat there, dense and undeniable, like smoke refusing to lift. The room, for the first time all night, went completely still. My cousin's fiancé blinked. My aunt clutched her necklace. My mother leaned forward slowly, her voice brittle as dried leaves. "Elena," she began, "why didn't you tell us?" I turned to her, held her gaze. Not with anger, just with truth. Because no one ever asked. It didn't come out sharp. It came out level, measured. A fact, not a weapon. My uncle looked like he wanted to laugh, then realized no one else was. My brother's jaw clenched. Nate had always been the showstopper, the pride of the family, the one with the story worth telling. And yet, his face now, tight, unreadable, wasn't just surprise. It was fear. "You bought the land?" he asked, voice lower than usual. "Technically," I said. "Lunaris Holdings did." "But you own Lunaris," he snapped. "Yes." I didn't flinch. He did. He narrowed his eyes. "Of course you hid it. That's what you're good at, right? Staying quiet until it's too late." I met his stare, not with anger, but with something colder. "Funny, I learned that from you." Someone reached for a wine glass and knocked over the pepper shaker instead. Ava, my niece, just stared at me with wide, unblinking eyes. Like, maybe, for the first time, she was seeing me. My brother stood. "You knew," he said. "You knew the loan was denied. You let me talk about rebuilding, about applying. I didn't block it," I said. "The system did." "But you could have stopped it," he growled. I didn't respond because I could have, and I didn't. Not out of vengeance, but because I'd spent years giving warnings to people who weren't listening. I saw my mother's lips tighten. She wanted to say it wasn't fair, that I blindsided them, that I turned my back on family. But she couldn't find the words because the truth wasn't cruel. It was just overdue. I picked up my napkin, folded it gently, the same way I had folded thousands of lines of code, the same way I had folded pieces of myself to fit into their world. I placed it on the plate. My water glass was still half full, still cool to the touch. I didn't take another sip. No one moved. I pushed back my chair, stood slowly. My heels barely made a sound against the hardwood. "Elena," my mum whispered again, this time not with anger, but with something smaller, maybe shame, maybe regret. "You built all that," she said, "all of it, on your own." I didn't say yes, she already knew. My brother finally looked at me, really looked. And what I saw in his eyes wasn't hate. It was something messier. Fear, envy, guilt. He wasn't the main character anymore. I gave the room one last glance. Not for approval, not for forgiveness. Just to remember what it looked like. This table I'd been reaching for all my life, only to realize I'd built one of my own, somewhere far away. I turned, walked toward the front door. No one followed, no one called out. I opened it, stepped into the cool night. Behind me, the house still glowed. The dinner was unfinished, the dessert untouched. And somewhere in that silence, they finally heard me. The porch light glowed behind me like a spotlight that had missed its cue. I walked the gravel path to my car, each step quieter than the last. No one came after me, no apologies, no raised voices. I didn't need them. By the time I slid into the driver's seat and closed the door, the hum of the party was already fading, replaced by a stillness that felt earned. I sat there, letting the weight settle. The kind of silence that doesn't ache anymore. The kind that feels clean. My phone buzzed softly. A message. From Ava. I want to learn coding like you. Can I? I stared at the screen, my lips curling into something that felt almost like hope. Then another ping. Mom. You should have said something. I left it unread for a moment, then tapped it. Read. No reply. Because that wasn't a question, it was a rewrite, a grasp at control, a soft attempt to pretend they would have listened if only I'd spoken louder. But I had. Just not in their language. They didn't hear it then. They were hearing it now. In the following weeks, I received 3 calls from cousins I hadn't heard from in years. One wanted to grab coffee, another asked if I could look over a business idea. The third just sent a string of fire emojis under a Forbes article they assumed was about me. None of them got a reply. I wasn't being cruel. I was being done. Another notification blinked. The family group chat. A new message, a blurry photo from dinner, captioned, "Family always finds its way." I stared at it for a second, pressed, held. Leave group. Delete thread. Done. Instead, I turned my focus elsewhere. I finalized the papers for the East Lot, where Nate had once dreamed of building his barn-turned-brewery. Instead, I repurposed the property into something quieter, less flashy, a non-profit incubator space for young women of colour interested in AI and environmental tech. We named it The Grove. No press release, no ribbon-cutting ceremony. I didn't put my name on the plaque. Real power doesn't need a spotlight. It grows best in the shade. Some of the girls come from places like I did, small towns with big ceilings. Some come from noise, some from silence. But they all arrive with questions in their eyes and fire in their hands. Ava was the first to apply. She didn't use her last name, just Ava, age 13. I like computers and quiet. That was enough. One evening I stood at the edge of the field that used to hold hay bales and rusted fences, now reseeded with fibre lines and solar panels. I watched the sun fall behind the tree line and thought, this is what legacy should feel like. Not a statue, not applause, just motion, moving something forward even if no one's clapping. The land had changed hands, yes, but more than that, it had changed purpose, and so had I. The plane hummed beneath me, a steady vibration I barely noticed anymore. I sat by the window watching the clouds split around us like slow-moving waves. Seattle was still hours away, but the distance already felt complete. In my lap was a folded piece of paper, crinkled at the corners, edges uneven. Ava had slipped it into my coat pocket the night I left. I opened it again. Someday I'll build something like Lunaris, maybe even better. It wasn't signed. It didn't need to be. I smiled, not because of pride, but because of peace. She'd seen something in me I hadn't dared to hope for. Not success, not revenge, just possibility. I took a slow breath, leaned my head back, and let the hum of the engines carry me forward. A notification blinked on my phone. Another family group text. More photos from the dinner, jokes, someone mentioning my name, probably trying to pull me back in. I didn't open it. Instead, I pressed and held, selected Leave Conversation, then tapped Delete. The message was clear, no words necessary. I stared out the window again, the sun catching the wing just right, a sharp slash of light cutting across a sky that no longer felt so heavy. They could keep talking, keep wondering, keep twisting the story into something more comfortable for themselves. Maybe I became cold. Maybe I forgot where I came from. Let them say it. I didn't need their version anymore. I didn't need to be redeemed in their eyes. What I needed was exactly what I had now. A future I built myself. A name they never bothered to ask about. A silence that didn't ache, but healed. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't destruction. It's reconstruction. Sometimes the bravest act isn't yelling your worth. It's walking away from a table that was never meant for you and building one where others, like Ava, will always have a seat. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. You just have to be free. They erased me from their table, so I built a home they'll never be invited to. Subscribe for more stories where revenge doesn't scream, it whispers.